I want to tell you about one of the most influential Jewish movies of all time, and that is The Jazz Singer. It's a story about a young man who is feeling boxed in by his world, and he has these dreams of making music, basically be a rock star. Eventually, he finds some success. He leaves where he grew up, goes out into the big world, and that creates a massive, major rift in his family. A story about this struggle to live two lives is a canonical Jewish story in the modern era. In fact, it's been retold several times over the past century. Let's explore the 1980 remake of this story, and I want to explore why this story has resonated so much over the past bunch of years. I'm glad we're talking about this story right now because right now I'm going through the holiday of Yom Kippur, which is, in case you don't know, the Jewish Day of Atonement. Now, this movie, as we'll see, is all about this tension between tradition and modernity and trying to resolve this double life. But the movie also uses the Jewish fall holiday of Yom Kippur as an important part of the story. Not only do I like the insight that the movie brings, but I also like the fact that it uses Yom Kippur as an opportunity to look at it. Now, to me, this captures not only my Jewishness, but also what I'm trying to convey on this channel. If you're new here, my name is David, and on this channel, we explore what it means to be Jewish by looking at Jewish history, art, and culture. The story of the jazz singer follows a man named Yasel Rabinovich, who is the son of a cantor, the chazan, which is the person that leads the services in the synagogue. Now, by the way, the synagogue in this movie is the historic Eldridge Street Synagogue, which is a registered New York City landmark, which means that in this movie, religion tradition is represented by structures from the past. Now, the story of Yasel, or Jesse, as he's actually called, takes place in Lower East Side in the 1970s, which is the tail end of this era where the Lower East Side was dominated by Jewish immigrants. Just as a side point, there's another movie that also really brings out this tension of tradition versus modernity in the same exact time and place called Crossing Delancey, but we'll explore that one another time, don't you worry. We'll get there. Jesse's father, the cantor, escaped Europe, came to America, but he refuses to see alternate lifestyles and pathways as legitimate. Only his way is correct. The Rabinovich family have been cantors for many generations, means that they must continue to be cantors.
For 5 generations, the cantor Rabinovich has been singing in the synagogue.
The thing is that in America, there are more options than just being a cantor, and Jesse wants to explore other options.
I sing in the synagogue, Pop. For what? How can I afford that, Pop?
What you owe to God, you can never repay. Never! Never!
Okay, Pop, just take it easy.
Why do I feel like there's this archetype of like screaming Jewish dad in movies? Like if you remember in The Chosen.
Only the Messiah, when he comes, will bring them. And God will help build their new land. That's what written God, not Ben Gurion and his henchmen. No, never!
Anyways, the point is that Jesse's father, the cantor, believes that Jesse must use his voice only for God.
You think it's an accident that you can sing? God gave you your voice for his use, not yours.
All right, Pop, I'm sorry.
What's so interesting, and we'll get back to this point later on, is that Jesse actually wants to express himself in service of God. He actually wants to do what his father intends for him, but just not in the same way. So let's unpack this a little bit. Let's try to understand what Jesse is dealing with, and I think we can really see that in an interaction that Jesse has with a student that he's teaching for his bar mitzvah.
Why do I have to sing this at my bar mitzvah anyway?
Why? That's one of my favorite questions, too.
What's interesting about this discussion is that it's not really about a song that you have to sing at your bar mitzvah celebration. It's actually a deeper question of why do I have to conform to the traditional standards around me.
I thought that's the whole idea of being bar mitzvahed. You're a man. You don't have to listen to your parents anymore.
You've got a lot to learn.
I think we could really see Jesse's perspective here, his dilemma of, on the one hand, being stuck as a grown man within the confines of what his father wants, but on the other hand, he's not able to leave and just be the version of himself that he wants to, and so he's stuck in between these two worlds, and that causes him to live a double life. We can see how Jesse's double life unfolds by the use of his name. Now, most people in the world tend to have just one name that they use their whole life, but Jews during the 20th century and until today sometimes have two names. One is a Hebrew name,
Come to get my son, Yasser Rabinovich.
and one is a secular worldly name.
No, we ain't got no Jess Robinovich. We got a Jess Robin.
This tension between the names is emblematic of the larger tension between Jesse and his father. His father's trying to preserve their name the way it was for generations, while Jesse is looking towards the future and trying to adapt to these new surroundings.
He said there was no Jesse Rabinovich, only a Jess Robin. Hi, Robin.
It's a name, Pop. It's a professional name.
Problem is not just the names, it's this larger tension between the traditionalist view of Cantor Rabinovich and the modernist view of Jess Robin.
I'm just Robin.
Are you sure? I mean, I was expecting someone a little more religious looking.
No, I'm just a cantor.
Oh.
Throughout the first part of the movie, Jesse is working on this song that eventually becomes a hit. You see it develop during these moments where people in his vicinity are putting him down. For example, it starts off with his wife making a comment.
You know, you've got too much talent to waste it on music that doesn't mean anything.
Really? It means something to me.
And right after this, he begins to play guitar and write this song. And then a little later on, the rabbi comes over to him and tells Jesse,
If you really want to do it the right way, you can do it, yourself.
the implication of whatever the rabbi meant was that whatever Jesse is doing, whatever path he's on, is not really correct, and that obviously hurts him and pushes him down, and you see him react by starting to write lyrics to this eventual hit song.
Love on the rocks, no big surprise. Pour me a drink and I'll tell you some lies.
And so it's interesting that they're repressing him, but at the same time, it's causing him to develop a hit song, which gets him called out to LA, where he meets a woman named Molly, who starts working with him to try to develop his career, while his wife back in New York is not supportive.
Yay.
Ruby, why don't you come out here? You see the show, okay? Come on out to LA.
No, you come home, Jess.
The problem, the tension that his wife has, is that she agreed to marry Yasser Rabinovich, meaning she's married to the version of Jesse that he constructed for his father and the rabbi and for his wife.
There's always been a Jess Robin. Ever since I was a kid, you know, the songs, they go through your head. I don't know, I guess I came out here to see if they were any good.
But now that Jesse is living in LA, it doesn't feel like he has to repress the Jess Robin side of him. It doesn't line up with what Rivki wants in her marriage.
I always liked being married to a cantor.
Ruby, did you ever think that there might be something in life that's just as thrilling?
Like what? Like following a husband around from city to city saying wow?
To Rivki and the other characters in the traditionalist side, it doesn't make sense why Jesse would want to break away from tradition to pursue some sort of dream that, even if it was attainable, it wouldn't further the Jewish community's interests.
I don't believe it. This is the biggest night of my life, and you want to drag me back to Elridge Street.
It's where we belong. It's what we are. I mean, maybe you can break away from it, but I don't want to.
And remember, the thing is that it's not like Jesse just changed overnight. There always was a Jess Robin. It was just repressed. And now in this environment, he was allowed to be more authentic.
You're the one that's changed.
You're damn right I've changed. I finally found out where I belong. It's not back there, it's here.
But it's not where I belong. It's not what I want.
And as a result,
Pop, we're getting a divorce.
and Jesse finds a lot more understanding from Molly, who is not Jewish, but they find a way to still honor both of their backgrounds and to start a family together. It's so interesting that in this retelling of the jazz singer, Jesse's two wives, Rifki and Molly, represent his two lives. To Jesse, the fact that Molly isn't Jewish matters a lot less than the fact that she's able to understand him and be supportive. And this is so important to Jesse because of where he comes from, this repressive background, that he wants to be with someone that allows him to be himself as he is.
I do know I have to do it my own way.
To Jesse's father, the fact that Jesse's married to someone outside the faith, yeah, that's not going to fly. This idea of intermarriage being the worst thing in the world, worse than death, may be a theme you recognize from other Jewish works of art. Most famously, perhaps, is Fiddler on the Roof.
Don't you understand what that means, marrying outside of the faith? No! I said no!
So what happens is Jesse's father makes a surprise visit to LA to try to get Jesse to come home to New York. And at first, Jesse tries to appeal to his father, and he talks about authenticity, but then his father sees Molly and realizes she's not Jewish and has a total freaking meltdown.
I have no son.
Pop,
Iskadash. V'yiskadash.
Pop, why are you doing this? Pop.
In this moment, you can see all the stereotypes come out. The Fiddler on the Roof, the screaming chosen dad. It doesn't matter that Jesse's his only son. The fact that he's marrying outside the faith is reason enough to basically treat him like he's dead.
Why are you doing this? You've been that ancient kin!
What's really important to emphasize at this point is that although the cantor sees Jesse marrying outside the faith as worse than death, to Jesse, the exact reverse is true. Living in a world where he can't pursue his dreams is a death in and of itself.
When a Jew mourns someone dead, they tear a piece of their clothes.
Who's dead?
What's interesting about this movie is it points out the whole conflict between Jesse and his dad, between tradition and modernity, is all about the direction a person is looking in. The traditionalists, the father, the rabbi, Rifki, are all looking to the past, while the modernists, Jesse and Molly, are looking towards the future. Throughout the whole movie, at different points, characters repeat this line of, you need to know where you come from to know where you're going. For example, when Jesse first tells his dad about the fact that he's writing songs and performing them, and he wants to become a rock star, his dad obviously resists the idea. And the reason that he gives is interesting. He invokes the death of the people who perished in Europe.
There are some things is more important not to change. Our people were killed for saying a prayer a certain way. We owe it to them to keep on saying it their way. You can't change what has always been. That's how you know where you stand, who you are.
To the father, Jewish tradition was about preserving the past, preserving the memories of the people who passed.
And if you don't know where you come from, how do you know where you're going?
And Rifki also echoes this exact sentiment. There's a moment where she meets Molly for the first time during a concert that Jesse's putting on to like a packed theater of people.
How can you leave all this?
Does he have to?
It's more complicated than that, Molly. You can't understand. We're different. It goes back to our parents.
To her, upholding tradition, or in a sense, preserving the memories of the people before her, is the most important thing.
You're right, Rivka. I don't understand. I know very little about where he comes from, about you or the hold you all seem to have on him, but I know where he's going. Listen to him.
And that is why Jesse ends up with Molly, because she understands Jesse's ambition. That's probably what brought her to LA in the first place. And they are both of the same mind that you can't let the past hold you back. But let's remember one thing, and that is this movie is The Jazz Singer. which means that as Jesse finds success as a popular singer, he books a show in New York, and as he's rehearsing, a congregant, someone from his father's shul, ends up coming to the theater.
What is it, Pop?
Your father, it's high blood pressure. It's not serious. But the doctors wouldn't let him sing tonight.
Leo, please.
You realize what this means, Yossele. It's the first time in 5 generations that Rabinovich wouldn't be singing Kol Nidra on Yom Kippur.
Now, in case you don't know, Kol Nidre is the opening service of the holiday of Yom Kippur. And in this movie, it also has this extra meaning of being symbolic of Jewish tradition. And so what this guy was saying is that if Jesse goes to the synagogue and, leads the service, this very symbolic prayer, that it will help mend the relationship between him and his father.
I thought tonight, if you would sing Kol Nidra in his place, what better way to bring the two of you together again?
Leo, look. I know you mean well, but it's too late for something like that.
Molly also understands the importance of mending a relationship with his father, but she also understands a larger importance of Yom Kippur.
Jess, I may be a shiksa. I know what Yom Kippur means.
Jesse is reluctant to go back. First of all, the services don't really resonate the way they used to, but also he doesn't want to return to a world where he has to pretend to be someone that he really isn't anymore.
You still don't understand. He won't take my calls. He won't answer my letters. As far as he's concerned, I'm dead. You understand? I'm dead to him.
Molly insists that Jesse go back and make amends with his father.
It's me your father was looking at when he tore his clothes. Don't you see? If you don't at least try, this is always going to be something between us.
And as the story goes, Jesse relents, goes into the synagogue at the last minute, and takes the podium. The cantor is surprised, but he still refuses to speak to Jesse.
We have to talk. It's been over a year, Pop. Isn't that long enough? This is Yom Kippur, day of forgiveness. Please, please listen to me.
Jesse tries to make amends through reason. He uses the father's language.
You used to tell me you gotta know where you come from to know where you're going. Well, I know where I come from. I know where I'm going now. I got my own congregation now, and they love my music. They say it makes them feel things, it makes them happy. What is so terrible?
These arguments fall on deaf ears. The father doesn't want to hear about looking forward to the future or about authenticity. But in desperation, Jesse shares that he and Molly had a son.
You have a grandson, Pop. Chaim Rabinovich, 6th generation. I understand. You have no son, so you have no grandson. Well, you're wrong.
And apparently, it's this familial bond that is able to break through the rigid boundaries of the father's heart.
Yasa, Gityantif, my son.
Just as Jesse was able to go back to his older persona and sing the Kol Nidre prayer, his father was able to go forward and attend one of his shows. There's something about this story that causes it to be retold over and over again. As I mentioned at the outset, this is a retelling of a much older story from the 1920s, a story that has been part of Jewish consciousness for the past century. The original story was written by a man named Samson Raphaelson in 1921 and was turned into a play and then a movie in 1927. There were 2 remakes during the 50s and then a 4th remake in 1980. But the legacy of the jazz singer still continues to this day. For example, in 2020, there was a miniseries called Unorthodox, which is about a Jewish girl coming from a repressive, traditionalist background who then tries to express herself through music. Also, there's this movie that came out in 2018 called The Awakening of Mati Walkenbruch, which is about a Jewish boy who falls in love with a girl who is not in the faith. And this made me realize something really interesting about the holiday of Yom Kippur. You see, growing up, I thought of the Day of Atonement as this time to reflect on our actions, but also kind of bargain with God. But now that I'm getting older, I'm beginning to realize that there's this whole other meaning to Yom Kippur. And that is, Yom Kippur is also a time to contemplate our Jewish identity.
And a happy Yom Kippur.
Night.
Yom Kippur is a time when people who may not go to shul, go to synagogue, will attend services. And even if you're reading the translations and stuff, it's about atonement and also these esoteric services that happened in the old temple in Jerusalem. And it becomes really hard to relate to this stuff in the modern world. And so you begin to think, like, why am I even here? Like, what am I doing in this synagogue? And the answer is, well, because you're Jewish. So the next question is, well, what does that mean? What does it mean to be Jewish? So Yom Kippur really has kind of a double layer to it. The surface is about what the holiday is literally about: atonement and sacrifice and God. But the deeper meaning is it's an opportunity for us to search our identity, to ask ourselves, where do we come from and where are we going? And what's so interesting is that there are a ton of movies that do this as well, that talk about Jewish identity, particularly about romantic relationships between someone who is Jewish and someone who isn't, while also using Yom Kippur, or a high holiday service, as part of the story. So first up is Liberty Heights, which uses the high holiday service as an important part of the story, but also a huge part of the story is about a Jewish boy falls in love with a girl who is not of the faith.
Just kill me now. Just kill me now.
What are you talking about?
What do you mean she's attractive?
Another example of a very similar plot, which is a little more recent from last year, is called You People, and it's about Jonah Hill's character, who is Jewish, falling in love with someone who isn't Jewish, and the tension that comes about. And again, they use Yom Kippur as a part of the story.
It is Yom Kippur, goddammit.
And I'll give you just one more really crazy example. This movie called The Believer, which stars Ryan Gosling as a Jewish boy who then becomes a neo-Nazi and falls in love with a neo-Nazi girl who wants to become Jewish. I know, it's a crazy movie. Eventually, I'll cover that one too. Anyways, a big part of that story, without giving spoilers away, is Yom Kippur. So there's clearly some sort of link between exploring the theme of intermarriage and our Jewish identity and the high holidays. Let's go one step further, and that is to understand, why does this story resonate so much with audiences?
I know what you believe. I've tried to live up to it, Pop. I swear I've tried to live up to it, but I can't do it anymore. I can't do it anymore. Pop, I have things inside of me. I have to express them. I have my music. I have my life, my feelings. Maybe they come from God, too.
This also rings true with what Samson Raphaelson wrote in his short story in 1921. How could the old cantor, or for that matter, Jesse himself, understand that instead of being sinful and self-indulgent, loose and lazy, this grave-eyed boy with the ways of the street was sincerely carrying on the tradition of plaintive religious melody of his forefathers? What Raphaelson is trying to tell us, the story of the jazz singer at its heart is about anyone that feels repressed by people around them, who see self-expression and authenticity as insufficient or sinful. And we know that there was always a Jess Robin, even when it looked like there was only Yussel Rabinovich. But both sides are ultimately trying to express something very profound about Jesse himself. And that's why in the movie, Jesse's music catches on, but it's also why the story resonates with us. If you're still watching, first of all, thank you for being here to the end of this episode of Yiddish Kino Club. Each week, we cover one theme in one movie about Jewishness. So if there's a movie you think I should cover, then you should let me know. If you want to get into the high holiday vibe, I recommend watching this video about A Serious Man. Also, if you want to see my take on the original jazz singer from 1927, you can see that here.